Tuesdays is proudly supported by Modern Money Lab, an organization founded by economists Stephen Hale and Phil Lawn and activist Gabby Bond. Modern Money Lab and Torrens University are running online graduate courses in MMT and ecological economics from September this year. You don't have to have a conventional economics degree to apply, and if you're interested, Stephen and Gabby will be happy to answer all of your questions.
Hi, my name's Gabrielle Bond and I'm here with my friend Stephen Hale. You might remember us from our show on Kerberos Media, Modern Money Donuts.
We're proud sponsors of Kerberos Media. We'd like to tell you about our global online courses in modern monetary theory and ecological economics. They start this September. They're unique as far as I can tell. I don't think there's anything like them anywhere in the world.
If you want to find out more, you can visit our website www.modernmoneylab.org.au.
To find out about the courses, go to www.modernmoneylab.org.au.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for joining me for edition of Quick Hitters with Rocco Millian. The book I'm going to discuss today is Chris Hedges' book called Death of the Liberal Class. Very good book. I didn't finish it yet, but just the first part that I have read has some very profound truths that are obscured from the public's view, hidden in plain sight. So I'm going to go over this. It's pretty self-explanatory, but as we go through, I'll stop periodically and talk about it. So let me just put this up. Okay. All right. So this is the introduction, and it starts off with a few quotes from pretty famous authors. I got this at the biggest setting for so that everybody could see all the words real good. But anyway, I'm going to start off. At any given moment, there is an orthodoxy, a body of ideas, which is assumed that all right-thinking people will accept without question. It is not exactly forbidden to say this or that or the other thing, but it is not done to say it. Just as in mid-Victorian times, it was not done to mention. Hold on one second. Just as in mid-Victorian times, it was not done to mention trousers in the presence of a lady. Anyone who challenges the prevailing orthodoxy finds himself silenced with surprising effectiveness. A genuinely unfashionable opinion is almost never given a fair hearing, either in the popular press or in the highbrow periodicals. This is from George Orwell's Freedom of the Press. So the first chapter, resistance, to allow the market mechanism to be the sole director of the fate of human beings in their natural environment, indeed, even of the amount and use of purchasing power, would result in the demolition of society. For the alleged commodity, labor power, cannot be shoved about, used indiscriminately, or even left unused without affecting the human individual who happens to be the bearer of this particular commodity. In disposing of a man's labor power, the system would incidentally dispose of the physical, psychological, and moral entity of man attached to the tag. Robbed of the protective covering of cultural institutions, human beings would perish from the effects of social exposure. They would die as the victims of acute social dislodgation. Through vice, perversion, crime, and starvation, they would die. Nature would be reduced to its elements. Neighborhoods and landscapes defiled, rivers polluted, military safety jeopardized, the power to produce food and raw materials destroyed. This is by Carl Polanyi, The Great Transformation. Great quote there. Does it sound familiar? Because it should, because this is exactly what we are experiencing here in the end stage of capitalism, aka neoliberalism, under our neoliberal status quo. So he goes on to say, Ernest Logan Bell. This is the start of the chapter here. Ernest Logan Bell, an unemployed 25-year-old Marine Corps veteran, walks along Route 12 in upstate New York. A large American flag is strapped to the side of his green backpack. There is a light drizzle, and he is wearing a green army poncho. He's a short, muscular, and affable fella with brown hair and a close military crop. Bell tells me when I stop my car that he is on a 6-day, 90-mile, self-styled liberty walk from Binghamton to Utica. He plans to mount a quixotic campaign to challenge Democratic incumbent Representative Michael Arcuri in the 24th Congressional District as the Republican candidate. Bell has camped out along the road for 3 nights and stayed in cheap motels the other nights. He opposes the health care bill recently passed by the Democratic majority Congress. He calls for an end to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. He advocates the abolishment of the Federal Reserve and is against the federal government's Wall Street bailouts and wants to see the immediate government relief for workers, including himself, trapped in prolonged unemployment. He carries a handwritten sign, "End the Fed," echoing the title of the book by U.S. Representative Ron Paul. He keeps in his backpack, by the way, along with a copy of the U.S. Constitution for Dummies by Michael Arnhem. He says he plans to deliver Paul's book to Arcuri's office in Utica. I just walked through the town of Norwich, he says, as a car passes and the driver honks in support. And there was a strong Tea Party movement there. So understand what they're talking about here. This guy, he's not really a Republican. He's not really a Democrat. He's kind of confused in all of this. So let's just keep going, then I'll talk about this more. The Tea Party movement, for the most part, is just a bunch of disgruntled Americans. They know that something is wrong, and they are ready to be engaged. A lot of the people in my area who are in the Tea Party are Democrats. People are confused. They are shell-shocked. They don't know what to think. But acting like these problems started January 20th, the date of the presidential inauguration, is absurd. To single out the current president and not the presidents before him is not productive for trying to figure out what is actually going on. Now, it's important to note that they're talking about Obama in this book, but the same exact thing is happening right now with Trump. All right, we refuse to look at root problems, whether you're talking about dummies wanting to blame Obama for everything, or whether you're talking about dummies wanting to blame Trump for everything. The problem is they are both part of the same status quo. They are both right-wing neoliberals who put profit over people in society. So that's what we have to understand here. But anyway, Bell, who lives in Lansing, New York, is the new face of the resistance. He is young, at home in the culture of the military, deeply suspicious of the federal government, dismissive of the liberal class, and unable to find work, and he's angry. He swings between right-wing and left-wing populism, expressing admiration for both Paul and U.S. Representative Dennis Kucinich, as well as the Tea Party movement. He started out as a supporter of John McCain in the last presidential election, but soured on the Arizona senator and the Republican Party for their ties to the Wall Street. He ended up not voting in that election. He raised about $1,000 from neighbors and friends for his own campaign. Adept at martial arts, he made it to the semifinals of the 2010 Army National Guard Combative Championship at Fort Benning in Georgia, where in his last bout, he suffered a broken nose and bruised his opponent ribs and thighs and lost in a split decision. And he says, "I'm truly terrified when I think about our future," he says, and this is at the root of it. I don't care if you think the right are crazy or you think that liberals are pussies, whatever. At the root of all of this, is people that are afraid. All right. It's people that see that something is wrong. They can't quite put their finger on it, but they know this isn't the way life is supposed to be. They know that money is not supposed to be more important than human life. It's not supposed to be more important than our democracy itself. All right. That's why people are so angry. All right. But anyway, I'm going to go on. I believe all signs point to real systemic economic collapse in the near future, maybe even before the midterms. I believe this is why many incumbents are stepping down. They seem to know what is coming, and of course the rats are jumping ship and taking their pensions with them. There will be nothing the government or the Fed can do to slow the pain. No more tricks in the bag. I assure you it's going to hurt everyone except, of course, the corporate and banking elite. I say let the empire collapse. Sometimes we must die to be reborn. The political system as it stands offers little hope for influencing real change or social justice. I propose we attempt to reverse this coup d'etat by attempting a coup of our own. First, we must try to retake the traditional means of control, power, and discourse by restoring integrity to our sold-out democratic election system. Unfortunately, this will probably do little good, but it still is a worthy effort. It is our patriotic duty to resist tyranny. Let me say that again. It is our patriotic duty to resist tyranny. We must break these chains of oppression and restore our government to principles based on liberty and justice for all. I am not confident that this standing outside buildings with signs is going to provide any fundamental power shifts, as power is not often transferred without a struggle. Inalienable rights are not a courtesy of the federal government. We must stand in the streets and refuse to be silenced. We must reject corporate-controlled politics and focus on rebuilding a localized political structure in society. A revolution is the only alternative to complete surrender and defeat. Cold, hard suffering and pain will be the only hope for a real revolution. And this is all but guaranteed. At this point, protest must be transformed into acts of defiance. We must be bold. All right, so a couple points here before I go on. I'm going to go back to where he talked about the Fed, of course. That's where I'm going. So this is a guy, and he identifies with the Tea Party, the right wing, as well as left-wing populism. But you see what he's saying. He's basically saying the same things I'm saying, He's a constitutionalist. Our government for, of, and by the people, that's literally a socially owned government that's meant to work for the public purpose and let individuals make what they can from the balanced economy that creates. Obviously, that's not happening, all right, because our government is forcing millions of people to be unemployed and poor. Now, he knows that there's a problem, but he can't put his finger on it. And so because he doesn't understand our operational reality, he doesn't understand how our economy actually works, he falls victim to the scare tactics of Ron Paul and the scare tactics about the Federal Reserve being private and all of this kind of thing. And, he wants to end the Fed. So, we got to understand we can end the Fed today. All right. Congress made the Federal Reserve by law. So Congress can modify the Federal Reserve by law or even end the Federal Reserve by law today. All right. And we can make the Treasury do all of the Federal Reserve's duties. Okay. That will not change a damn thing. Understand this. That will not change anything because it's Congress, not the Fed, who decides. It's Congress who decides to starve our economy of dollars. It's Congress that decided not to spend the dollars required to buy up all unemployment and start and maximize our productive capacity, rebuilding our crumbling communities all over. It's Congress that decides to starve our economy of dollars, and when it does this by targeting unemployment, that means it's not spending the dollars required to have true full employment. So it's starving our economy of dollars. It's keeping millions of people unemployed and poor. That's driving everybody's wages down, everybody's working conditions down. This is why our wages have been stagnant from the 70s, while our productivity has been sky high. Our cost of living has been sky high. Their corporate profits have been sky high, but our wages have been stagnant from the 70s. All right. This is a deliberate class war. All right. This is our government giving a weapon to capital to wage war on the majority. All right. That weapon, involuntary unemployment, is artificial scarcity. All right. So, like I said, even if we ended the Fed, it wouldn't change anything. In the reverse, even if we don't do nothing with the Fed, Congress can always spend the dollars into existence that are required to buy up all unemployment with a federally guaranteed living wage job program for everyone who wants one. That would balance our economy up front with dollars instead of forcing us all into private credit to survive. Credit cards for milk and eggs, credit for healthcare, education, transportation, credit for housing. This would balance our economy instead with living wage jobs, with dollars. All right. And that would balance our economy, and it would also maximize our productive capacity, rebuilding our crumbling communities to meet everybody's base needs in the public sector for free, with essential public goods and services like top-notch education and healthcare, for instance. All right, because if government is paying doctors to administer healthcare, government's paying teachers to teach, there's absolutely no reason to charge the end user. Right? These are socially valuable goods and services in their own right, and they are essential to a free, civil, modern society like ours. So there's no need to charge the end user. Government doesn't need an income. Government doesn't need profit. Government's the currency issuer. All dollars are made from thin air by law. All right. So this kid needs to understand that if government was truly working for the public purpose, then they would be balancing our economy with a federally guaranteed living wage job program. And anybody who wants to work would have a living wage job, providing socially valuable benefits to the community. Instead of paying people to be unemployed, with unemployment insurance and food stamps and welfare, we could be paying people to work and to rebuild our communities. This is common sense. And if government does that, credit is irrelevant. The banks, the Fed, it's irrelevant. It can't stop it. All right. The Federal Reserve cannot make new net dollars. Say it with me. The Federal Reserve cannot make new net dollars. The Federal Reserve is a creature of Congress. Only Congress makes new net dollars with spending bills. Only Congress decides if we're going to be vulnerable to private credit in the Fed by starving our economy of dollars, by targeting unemployment. If Congress instead targets true full employment with a federal job guarantee, the Fed's irrelevant. Credit is irrelevant. And again, if we end the Fed today, it doesn't change anything because our government is still going to be starving our economy of dollars, forcing us into private credit to survive. So the Fed is not the problem or the solution. Congress is the problem. Congress is the solution. And we can force Congress collectively to buy up all unemployment at any time, any day. Government can buy anything for selling dollars because it makes all dollars at will from thin air. All right. So this is what I mean. These people are not our enemies. They just don't understand our reality. So sometimes we do need to be gentle, sometimes not. Sometimes we need to, embarrass them, make them look silly. Like that guy I interviewed the other day, the Trump supporter. Sometimes it takes a mixture of these things. But this is what the conversations we need to have. This is what we need to look at. He says that we're heading for an economic collapse. And I agree. Our government is starving our economy, forcing us all into private credit. And private credit is completely unsustainable. It always dries up. Private credit is real. That's a real burden for the people. Now, public debt, that's something completely different. That's a real asset for the people. All right. So when government spends dollars, those are government's debt. It sells bonds. It offsets whatever net spending it does with government bonds. So that is actually what is our national debt, is all the deficit spending our government has done from the beginning of America, added up. So in reality, the national debt is simply all the dollars in existence that have yet to be taxed back yet. If our national debt was zero, we would have $0 in existence. So the only way public debt can be a burden on us is if it's too small, meaning government is starving our economy of dollars. They are fostering starvation wage environments by targeting unemployment, forcing us all into private credit just to consume production and survive. We live a precarious existence in this way. And this is completely unsustainable. It always leads to booms, busts, and bailouts. And then the government will bail out the top. And so they, the oppressors and the predatory behavior, the predators get rewarded. And it's, like we saw in 08, the financial crisis in 08. Obama rewarded the financial predators at the top, saying that somehow these are the people that an economy needs. No, these are the people that are killing our economy, siphoning off the wealth of the majority, living off the labor of the majority. All right, we don't need them. They need us. It's time we understand that. And he says we are headed for an economic collapse. I agree. And of course, the only people that get hurt in these kind of collapses are the bottom. The people living paycheck to paycheck. The rich, they don't get hurt. They have enough money to live 3 lifetimes. And then again, the banks, the government will bail them out anyway. So this is our trickle down status quo. It's completely unsustainable. It's completely ridiculous and illogical. But these people have a point. So anyway, this goes on to talk about this kid, and this is very important to understand. So I'm going to read it. Bell grew up in Oakwood, a small town in East Texas between Dallas and Houston. His father struggled with alcoholism and is now in recovery. His parents, who frequently fought, separated and reunited, divorced when Bell was 13. His mother was left to raise Bell, along with his younger brother, currently in the Army's 82nd Airborne Division. And his younger sister is in a one-bed, and his mother was forced to raise all 3 of them in a 1-bedroom apartment. There was very little money, and his mother had to work sporadically at odd jobs. There were 18 people in his high school graduating class. That's it. And with few jobs in Oakwood, Bell, along with several of his classmates, had to join the military. All right, so this is a great point. Our military serves as a federal job guarantee. It's the employer of last resort, not a federal job guarantee, but the employer of last resort. All right, for people like me and people like this kid Bell, the only option for a stable career opportunity was in the military. So we have to, sell out our morals and become killers, become oppressors, inflicting this for-profit imperialism worldwide on innocent people for no other reason than the special interests of our capitalist class. So, this doesn't have to be this way. We can instead have a real federal job guarantee. And if people are able to stay home and rebuild their own communities in green, sustainable ways for a living wage, guess what? The military will not be able to conduct its for-profit imperialism worldwide. It would be forced to abandon its goals of empire and truly defend our rights against all enemies, foreign or domestic, because that would be from rogue nations to our domestic capitalist class. They would have to protect us from them, and that would be the only way to make enough people feel patriotic enough to even leave the federal job guarantee and go to the military in the first place. And this federal job guarantee, this is the revolutionary progressive keystone program from which all other programs will flow. Like I say, this is a democratic means of production. It's capable of increasing just about any production that we need for the general welfare, common defense, and domestic tranquility, as it's mandated by our Constitution. And I'll get back. We're going to keep going back to that, but I'm going to keep reading. My father worked 2 jobs to support us. He suffered from the disease of alcoholism, but is a good guy, and he tried to be a supportive father, Bell says. My mother had her own set of problems. She is now living in a 1-room shack. She had breast cancer 4 years ago and has no insurance and is living in poverty. I know the system is not working. She lives at the little house, a 1-bedroom cabin on her mother's land, where me and my brother lived off and on when my parents were arguing. We lived in several different houses and apartments with both my mom and dad. I left home when I was 17, drifting between friends' houses, and then moved back to Oakwood, where I finished high school, living with my grandparents, who had a profound effect on my life and values. My life was inconsistent, chaotic, and working class. I believe this environment helped develop my character and perspective. I have to give credit where it's due. My dad tried, I actually agree with parts of that, because I believe everything that I went through helped, and everything we all go through helps to, mold our character and our values and, our positions. And so I actually agree with that, but I'm going to go on and keep reading. You couldn't stay in Oakwood, Texas and have a job, he adds. And Bell moved to upstate New York 2 years ago after leaving the Marine Corps to be near Cheyenne, his 3-year-old daughter. And he and the girl's mother are separated. Bell found work as a carpenter with a traveling construction crew. He earned $14.50 an hour, and he could sometimes make as much as $800 a week. Whoop-dee! Then the financial meltdown knocked the wind out of the local economy. Everybody in my apartment building has had their hours cut and are unemployed or have taken minimum wage jobs to make ends meet. 1 second. Everyone in my apartment building had to take, had their hours cut, or they were unemployed, they were let go, or they had to take minimum wage jobs, he says. I was laid off last year. I tried to find work as an independent carpenter. I don't have health insurance. The dearth of work, which left him attempting to survive at times on $600 a month, saw him enlist last year in the New York National Guard. Even though it means almost certain deployment to Afghanistan, the enticement of a $20,000 signing bonus was just too lucrative to pass up. The National Guard unit he joined recently returned from a tour in Afghanistan. We are training to go back to Afghanistan, he says. The fact that they are still using Army National Guard, state-level troops, to police the streets of Afghanistan is not good. These units are really overstretched. We do not get the benefits. We don't get health insurance like active duty, but the Guard gets deployed just as much. Some of these guys have been on 3 and 4 deployments. I got out of the Marine Corps and went back to Texas for 10 months and was involved in John McCain campaign, he says. I really got disillusioned with the neoconservatism. I never been involved in politics. The idea that we needed all these troops all around the world, defending freedom, as they called it, when we were actually engaging in nation building and supporting special interests that drive these wars, was something I began to understand. As far as foreign and economic policy go, I could see there was no difference between the 2 main political parties. There was a false left-right paradigm, which diverts the working class from the real reasons for their hardships. Boom. Drop the mic. That's it. All right, let me read that again. He after all this, he goes back to his hometown. He gets disillusioned with the neoconservatives because he was working on the McCain campaign. And he was disillusioned. He was never in politics before. But this idea that we all needed to send all these troops around the world to defend our freedom, as they called it, when we were actually engaging in nation building and supporting special interests that drive these wars, was something that he began to understand. As far as economic and foreign policy go, he could see there's no major difference between the two political parties. It's a fake left-right paradigm which diverts the working class from the real reasons for their hardships. I call that controlled opposition. Right? It makes us think that we are opposed to each other, that we stand for different things. And it's all about keeping us divided at the bottom, fighting against our own public purpose, our own democracy at the bottom, because they know that at the bottom, our class interests are the same. Whether you're black, white, Chinese, whatever, we all want a better standard of living. We all want our public purpose satisfied per the Constitution. And so they understand that. And to keep us from uniting and demanding and forcing a seat at the table, they have to keep us divided artificially. They have to keep us fighting against our public purpose in ways that we don't even understand. And this is how they do it, the main way, the left-right paradigm. And what this means is, like we're seeing right now, back under Obama, when all the right-wingers would attack Obama for every problem in America. And so many Democrats would say, wait a minute, this is crazy. Obama didn't start all this stuff, and even people like me, I voted for Obama twice. First, I started off on the right wing too, in the Navy, and I voted George W. Bush twice. But then I slowly grew, and I turned to the Democrats after I realized the folly of libertarianism and the right-wing ideology that makes no sense. So I went to the Democratic Party, and I was disillusioned. I was tricked into thinking that they were still the party of the working class. I was tricked into that. I thought Obama stood for hope and change. I thought he stood for transparency. All right. So now, though, it's the exact opposite with Trump. All these people on the left, so-called liberals, Democrats, they want to blame Trump for every problem in our nation. They don't want to look at the root problems. They don't want to go back and see that this isn't about Trump. This isn't about Obama. This is about a neoliberal right-wing status quo that seeks to privatize our public space. It seeks to make our essential public goods and services private and for-profit, and therefore incapable of meeting everybody's needs, incapable of satisfying our public purpose as it's mandated by our Constitution. They didn't want to see that, So I make sure I point out the hypocrisy on both sides. Obama and Clinton did what the Republicans never could. They destroyed the rest of the New Deal era. They destroyed it. All right, they destroyed the working class. You think about what Obama did. I could go into what Clinton did, but I have a few times. Let's talk about Obama for a minute, because this is the first president in our history that has ever killed American citizens without due process, without a trial or anything else. Just kill them, be judge, jury, and executioner. Obama was the first and only president to do that. He even killed American children. The propagandist for Al-Qaeda was one of the American citizens that he killed in Iraq. He was a bad guy, but he's an American citizen, so he deserved rights. We should have, in my interview with CIA whistleblower John Kiriakou, he said we should have tried him in absentia, laid out the evidence for the American people at least. You don't just go and be judge, jury, and executioner. And then a week later, we send more bombs over to kill his two nephews, 14-year-old American children, without a trial. And leftists will applaud him to this day. This was the least transparent president in history. And he won a Nobel Prize for being the most transparent president. You talk about doublespeak. This is doublespeak. All right. Obama prosecuted more whistleblowers than any other president put together. Okay. He refused to prosecute the director of our American torture program, Bloody Gina Haspel. He refused to prosecute her, said he didn't want to open old wounds. He wanted to move forward. We have to move forward with hope and change. Well, that decision has had consequences. That allowed Trump to then make Gina Haspel, Bloody Gina, make her the head of the CIA. This is how controlled opposition works. They both serve the same corporate masters. And don't forget, he wouldn't prosecute this horrible war criminal, Gina Haspel, committing evil in our names. He wouldn't do it. But then he goes and he prosecutes the American hero, CIA whistleblower, John Kiriakou, who ends up being the only man to do time over our American torture program because he exposed that American torture program. He exposed the evil carried out in our names. He refused to be a terrorist for America. And so they punished him. They went after him with everything they had. They wanted to destroy him financially, socially, spiritually. They wanted to destroy him. Why? So that they could divert others from speaking out, so that they can silence other truth tellers. That's the purpose of this. It's censorship. Okay, they want to act like Trump and Russia colluded to subvert our democracy. Sorry, the biggest corrupt influence in the 2016 election was not Russia or Trump. It was our own DNC. All right. And you don't got to take my word for it. Again, you go up and you look up the DNC fraud lawsuit. All right. They say it. They don't even hide this stuff because they consider all Americans morons. And I'm starting to believe them. Too many people don't give a shit, But anyway, you look at that DNC fraud lawsuit, and the DNC actually argues in open court that they can't be guilty of defrauding Bernie and Bernie voters because their members, us, have no right to democratically choose who wins our own primary. They said that they are completely within their rights to go in a back room and choose who wins the primary over cigars and whiskey. That was their argument. And legally, they may be right. Legally, they said they have no binding obligation to the public. They have no binding obligation to even follow their own corporate charter, which talks about democracy and the public purpose. They may be legally right, but we can't. This is a case where they may win the war, but they may win the battle, but we got to make them lose the war over this. All right. And don't forget all this stuff, all the horrors that Trump is now, the overt fascist, right-wing fascist that he is. That's courtesy of Obama and the DNC. Right? They rigged the primary against Bernie, who was beating Trump in head-to-head matchups by double digits. He had millions of followers all over the country, huge rallies. Hillary couldn't even fill up a school gymnasium. She was losing to Trump in head-to-head matchups by 2 points. At best, they were tied. So if the DNC was truly scared of this right-wing fascist we call Trump, if they were so scared of him, why on earth wouldn't they have run their best chance to beat the man, Bernie Sanders? Instead, they run a hated right-wing establishment candidate in Hillary because they preferred to lose to Trump over winning with Bernie. That's how opposed the DNC is to actually helping people. All right. They're not enemies with the Republicans. That's all political theater. All right. They both serve the same corporate masters. And this is how, our right-wing neoliberal status quo has been in place from the 70s. We go back and forth, back and forth. The Republicans, gut our democracy. They gut our public purpose. And Americans get fed up. And then a Democrat comes along speaking the language of the working class and giving us false hope. And we rise up and we elect the Democrats and only to find out that, they may talk better. They may be more educated. They may be act more sympathetic, but their policies kill. You're just as dead under Obama's neoliberal policies as you are under Trump's neoliberal policies. All right. Obama was completely fine with keeping our essential public goods private and for profit. Obamacare, energy. He let water protectors be terrorized by for-profit mercenaries of fossil fuel. He gave away sovereign native land so that fossil fuel industry could pollute it and build another leaky pipeline that pollutes our environment and makes our children drink poison, eat poison, breathe poison. All right. So this is what the Democrats get us. And then then people get so disgusted, they can't make ends meet. They have no hope for the future. And guess what happens? Scapegoating becomes real easy. Racism becomes real prevalent. Hate becomes prevalent. Life becomes cheap. All right. People become cutthroat. You get a dysfunctional and violent society when we get a person like Trump. That's what happens when we vote for right-wing neoliberal Democrats. All right. So don't tell me that we need a blue wave of right-wing neoliberal Democrats. How is that going to help us? These are the people that got us Trump to begin with. These are the people that abandoned FDR's full employment policies of the New Deal. From the 70s, both parties have inflicted economic and police terror on the majority. Both parties let people suffer and die because of no other reason than lack of money. All right. This is ridiculous. People need to understand that, and people like this kid, if you asked him about socialism, I guarantee you he would say, oh, no, that's horrible. Socialism's never worked anywhere in the world. Just look, and in reality, socialism always works, in our Constitution, in essence, is socialism. But what I say to that when people say, where has socialism ever worked? I always use a quick analogy. Because America makes sure socialism doesn't work, all right? If a government tries to work for their own public purpose, like Syria, Libya, Iraq, whatever, they have a constitution that, guarantees equality under the law. America goes to war with them. We don't care. We don't want the public purpose. We hate our democracy. We hate our own constitution. So I say, imagine the Wright brothers trying to fly for the first time. Everyone's saying it can't be done. Humans just can't fly. It's scientific. All right. Where has anybody ever flown before? And then the automobile industry didn't want planes to exist. They don't want flight to happen because it will cut into their market share. So in this analogy, the automobile industry is America, and the Wright brothers trying to fly is socialism. So every time the Wright brothers go down the runway and about to lift off, the automobile industry has these thugs sitting at the end of the runway with machine guns to blast off the wings of the plane, and the plane never gets off the ground. And then everybody in society says, see, man can never fly. It's scientific. That's exactly how it would be talking about socialism. Socialism never worked. Well, guess what? Socialism has the best chance of working in America because America can't invade America. So it's up to us collectively. We, the ruling class can't do anything that we don't collectively allow. All right. So that's where I disagree with this kid talking. That's what he doesn't understand. If we collectively rose up, the ruling class would have to do our bidding, just like they did every other time. Every working class gain we got has been got by clawing it away from the ruling class. They never just give us justice out of the kindness of their heart. We always have to unite in solidarity and collectively force the issue. And the ruling class will always bend to our will. They'll break and do our bidding long before we ever get majority support. Because once you get a majority of support, those rulers are going to be deposed either way. So they know that, and they don't want that. So they will always bend to our will long before we get a majority of support, just so they could stay in power, preserve power. And that's exactly what we see in FDR's personal correspondence to his brother and to others around the time of the Great Depression. And he's talking, and he tells his ruling class compatriots, listen, labor rose up. They wouldn't let anybody pass the picket lines. They wouldn't let anybody work. And, the ruling class was hiring mercenaries to kill them. People like the Pinkertons, not at that time, but like them. But anyway, FDR tells his buddies, look, either we give up a little bit of power and wealth now, or you're going to give it all up in the revolution that's sure to follow tomorrow, right? Because that's the only thing that the rulers will respond to is force. It's the only thing they respect. So I always talk about massive scale disobedience. Look up Howard Zinn. He's great with this stuff. And this isn't unrealistic. But if Americans, collectively stayed home from work for one day, not even every American, just a critical mass, stays home from work for one day, we can literally watch America grind to a halt, or whole sections of our economy grind to a halt, and without ever firing a freaking shot, without ever breaking a law. All right. The next day you go right back to work. So it's very low risk, but it's high reward, because now we have demonstrated our ability to organize and shut shit down. So now we can simply leverage that ability to get any demands met. All right. And our demands are not radical. It's simply that our government satisfy our Constitution, satisfy our public purpose. All right. And the government's not satisfying our public purpose when it's making essential public goods that are essential for a civil modern society like ours. And it's making those goods and services private and for profit, therefore incapable of meeting our rights, incapable of satisfying our public purpose. All right. When that our government isn't working for the public purpose, when we are forcing millions of people to be unemployed and poor, while there's work all around us that needs done and will not get done because there's no profit in it. All right. Only the government can maximize our productive capacity, because only the government can spend dollars into existence. Only the government has the power to mint and tax. So, when they say Congress has the purse strings, that's a true statement, but they don't think it through, or they don't want you to think it through, what that actually means. All right. Article 1, Section 8 mandates that our government mint and tax to provide for the general welfare and common defense thereof, to ensure domestic tranquility, as it is in the preamble of the Constitution. So what that necessarily means is our government never needs money. It mints and taxes dollars in and out of existence every day. It never needs to find money. The state government does, local governments do, but the federal government never does. All right. And what it also means is our government is responsible for providing certain essential public goods and services, like an infrastructure or a military for the common defense, like legal systems, like healthcare and education. And that is an essential public good that is the responsibility of the currency issuing government. Because without top-notch public health care and public education, you get what we got now. You get populations that are sick and diseased and miserable and uneducated, and they are therefore incapable of meeting our needs of tomorrow. That makes it completely impossible to ensure domestic tranquility, which is the government's job according to the Constitution. Domestic tranquility. No. The only way to do that is by targeting true full employment with a federally guaranteed living wage job program for everyone who wants one. All right. You give people living wage work, rebuilding our communities, raising our standard of living with healthcare, education, fully staffed schools, fully staffed elderly care centers, you name it. There's tons of needs all around us that are not getting done. That's work that needs done. It's not getting done. And remember, public debt for society and a higher standard of living, that's the entire point of government and dollars to begin with. All right. Government, we don't have a socially owned government so that it can make profits for the 1% and subvert our public purpose. Right. That's not the purpose of government. You won't find that in the Constitution. We have a socially owned government to provide for the public purpose and let the individual make what they can from the balanced economy that creates. That's the only sustainable way to do this. All right, because a consumer-driven economy like ours runs on sales. All right, if consumers like me and you don't have money to spend, a consumer-driven economy will fail. And so right now that's called the spending gap, the pay gap. It's representative of huge wealth inequality, representative of our government fostering starvation wage environments. And this means necessarily over time, the majority of people don't have disposable income. They can't buy what they produce. So they're forced into credit for everything to live a precarious existence. Credit cards for milk and eggs, credit for everything, healthcare, education, transportation, housing, credit. That's how they privatize our public space. And now you think about this. When I say privatize our public space, I mean that these public essential goods and services, once upon a time, were nearly free for everybody because, everybody understood that this is the only way that our government could satisfy its constitutional mandate to ensure domestic tranquility. We need healthy, educated populations to meet our needs of tomorrow. And, we see that exactly what happened. We went from the Great Depression to the #1 world superpower by deficit spending to invest in our society in productive capacity. All right, with the full employment policies of the New Deal. This literally balanced our economy for many years. The majority of federal spending went to the majority of the people at the bottom. Now, we forgot those lessons because once this happened, capital didn't just go away. They regrouped and they focused and they organized to fight back against the collectivism of the New Deal. And, we see that number primarily with the Lewis Powell memo, okay, which pretty much says that, our actual society is centrally planned, just like communist China. All right. And the whole point is the business interests, they want the banks to centrally plan our economy and society. They want to, take that power away from our sovereign government. All right. And we collectively are allowing this to happen. All right. So that's why I keep talking about this. I'm going to go ahead and read a little bit more. Then I'll open it up for some questions. All right. So the winters in New York State are really hard, Bill says. There are less jobs and the heating costs are high. I pay about $200 a month for electric and gas. I live really cheaply. I don't have cable. I don't go out and spend money that is not necessary. It is a struggle, but at least I have not had to devote 40 hours a week to a minimum wage job that does not pay me a living wage. People here are really hurting. The real underemployment rate must be at least 20%. A lot of people are working part-time jobs when they want full-time jobs. There are many people like me, independent contractors and small business owners, who can't file for unemployment insurance. Unemployment coverage is not available to me because I work as a 1099, a self-employed contractor. Even when I worked for the construction company, he was a subcontractor. So, this is it. This makes a good point too. And it goes back to Michael Hudson's book, Killing the Host. When we privatize our public space, we make energy for profit. We make healthcare for profit. We make housing for profit. We make transportation for profit. All of these payments cut into our income and they cut into the circular balance of payments flow in the economy between productivity and consumers or producers and consumers. That's where the money needs to be put. Consumers, but if I'm paying all my income to pay off private debt on credit cards for milk and eggs, pay off private debt to go to college, pay off private debt for my car, pay off private debt for my house, pay off private debt for healthcare. All right, then that doesn't leave any disposable income left over to consume production. And so that money is actually going to a non-productive part of our economy to finance, and they don't produce for our economy. They don't add value to our economy. They don't help the working class. Instead, they extract wealth in the form of economic rents. They lower our standard of living in this way. All right. So this is the deal. We don't have to live like this. We don't have to impose we don't have to impose austerity on ourselves. This guy is talking about not having cable, not spending money that's not necessary, as if it's a good thing, as if this is something to be proud of. Hey, I could deal with it. I don't got to go do what I don't got to do. I don't need any creature comforts. What kind of life is that? What kind of life is it where you can't even afford cable TV? All right. You think that's going to produce domestic tranquility? Do you think that's going to produce good neighbors? I don't. I think it's going to produce cutthroat people who are so desperate and so beaten down and have no hope that they're dangerous. And this will ensure a dysfunctional, violent society for all. People are scared, he says. They want to live their lives, raise their children, and be happy. All right? That's how we all want this at the bottom. We all of our class interests are the same. We all want this. We're all scared. We all want to live our lives. We want to raise our children, and we want to be happy as it's mandated in our Constitution and in Declaration of Independence, the pursuit of happiness. This is not possible today. And it's not because people are irresponsible or uneducated or don't have job skills. Again, even if every single person had the very best job skills and every single person had the most personal responsibility, because our government targets 5% unemployment, we would still be forcing millions to be unemployed and poor in a class war that drags everybody's wages down and fosters starvation wage environments. All right. So this is a systemic abuse in voluntary unemployment. It's a systemic abuse that can't be fixed with personal responsibility. Even if you, as one person, you go get the best job skills, you get more personal responsibility, and you go and you beat somebody else out of their living wage job. Well, that person then is unemployed and they don't have a living wage. And so it's a systemic problem that's always with our society. It can't be fixed with personal responsibility. So the fact is we don't have enough living wage jobs to go around for everybody. That's it. And so what people are trying to say and justify and do these mental gymnastics. Oh, well, you're not supposed to have a career at McDonald's. Oh, these are just entry-level jobs, and you're supposed to move up the corporate ladder. Move up to where? Beat somebody else out of their living wage job, then they're forced into starvation wage living? No. And even if, we're always going to need people to serve. We're always going to need servers. We're always going to need janitors. We're always going to need cooks. We're always going to need the people that keep our country moving. This is what I mean. And you're saying that these people are not entitled to live a good life. You're saying they're not entitled to have a comfortable future, to send their kids to school. They're not entitled to be happy because that's an entry level job. You shouldn't be able to survive on that. Come on, get real. All right. Bell says he and those around him are being pushed off an edge. He says he fears the social and political repercussions. Yeah, I do too. And you should too. All right. We see them all around us. Just today, as I'm doing my first video today, talking about how our society became so radicalized, so dehumanized, so violent and dysfunctional because we put profit over people in society, because we treat people like enemy combatants, and then we wonder why they respond like insurgents. I couldn't even get through a 30-minute video without another mass casualty event happening. This time in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, not 45 miles from where I live. A mass shooter, mass casualties. All right, these aren't one-off events. This is the new norm. All right, this is what happens when you disenfranchise millions of people and force them onto the black market, and you take people, you take any hope of a better life away from so many. These are the consequences. and we are all collectively responsible. You, me, everybody. Even if, like me, I'm responsible even though I oppose these policies because we didn't get it done. We didn't stop it. So we are still collectively accepting it, even me. All right. It's my job to make you see the truth and you understand and you oppose it too. Until that happens, I can't say that, I'm any less responsible than anybody else. We are all collectively accepting this stuff. The fact of the matter is, we should be, I want these public servants to be scared to death. If these public servants are afraid that their kids are going to get killed at school, if they're afraid they can't walk down the street, guess what? That means they're going to serve us tomorrow. That means they would be so terrified to vote against our public purpose, to vote against our democracy, that they wouldn't. They would then serve us, and people don't want to face that. They don't want to, they call me a radical. Oh, you're inciting violence. Bullshit. You're inciting violence by staying fucking silent. How about that? I hope there is a populist revolution, he says. We have to take the corporate bailouts. We have to take the corporate bailouts and the money we are sending overseas and use that money in our communities. If this does not happen, there will be more anger and eventually violence. Now, we know this isn't true. I get his sentiment. I actually do. But the corporate bailouts, they don't stop the government's ability to mint and tax and balance our economy and maximize our productive capacity. All right. The money we're sending overseas, that's because we're net importers. All right. So we buy the finite real resources from the world for infinite dollars. So we get the products from China. Capitalists in China want to make money. They want to sell us their products. We buy those products with dollars. All right. So those dollars are leaving circulation. It's called foreign leakage. It goes to China. They buy our bonds and they get free interest, or they invest in our economy with those dollars. All right. And it's not a burden. In actuality, this can be a great thing. This raises our standard of living. Because it allows if we don't have to toil in factories for starvation wages making widgets because China wants to do it for us, that allows our work to then focus on society, raising everybody's standard of living with green sustainable energy, infrastructure, public education, public health care, you name it. All the things that raise our standard of living, because no longer do we have to make widgets. Other people are doing that for us, and so government doesn't need that money. Government never needs any money. It never needs an income. We could tax the rich at 99% of their income. We could cut defense at 100%. All right. That doesn't give our federal government a single extra dollar to spend. It just doesn't. All federal spending is brand new dollars created by congressional law from thin air. All right. Our government always has infinite spending capacity. Our government can always mint dollars to buy anything for sale in dollars. And debt denominated in dollars is never a problem for the currency issuing government because they create dollars from thin air by congressional law. So public debt is very different than private debt for you and me. All right. Private debt is real for us. We need an income. We can't make dollars in our basement. Okay. So private debt is real. That's what we should be against. And we have record amounts of household debt right now. So what that means is there's only one way that could be reality. It means that our government is failing to do its job. It's failing to spend the dollars necessary up front to balance our economy with fiscal policy, with dollars up front, maximizing our productive capacity and rebuilding our communities. It fails to do that and instead starves our economy of the needed deficit spending. By targeting unemployment and forcing millions of people to be unemployed and poor, it creates these starvation wage environments, which then mean that we don't have enough disposable income to survive. So we are forced into private credit. to consume production and survive. This leads to booms, busts, and bailouts because private credit always dries up. And then our government will bail out the top 1% and let the working class die, lose our homes, suffer and die because of no money. Okay? So yeah, we don't need to take the corporate bailout money. We don't need to stop sending money overseas. We don't need to stop. We don't need to compete with third world nations for starvation wage jobs. It's a race to the bottom. Don't you see? Why on earth would anybody say that we need to get those jobs back? Those are the jobs of yesteryear. We don't want to go backwards. We want to go forwards. All right. We're not hurting for work. There's tons of work all over America. Just look outside your window right now, wherever you're at. All right. There's our communities are literally crumbling. Whole cities are drinking poison water. Bridges are collapsing. Schools are crumbling. Understaffed, underfunded. Elderly centers, are so overworked that elders are being abused, neglected because of lack of oversight. Children with special needs are being left to left to suffer without the resources they need. This is not how you get a civil society. This is not how you get people who respect life, who value human life. It's not how you get domestic tranquility. Can't you see? This is not complex. If this does not happen, there will be more anger and eventually there will be violence. That is a fact. And he says it. When you take away the majority's hope, when people have no hope of a better future, when I know I could work 2 jobs and still not make it, I know I could get a college degree and still have to work a starvation wage job in debt to my eyeballs. Guess what? I'm going to turn to crime. Why not? I'm going to try and take advantage of every freaking government program. I'm going to try and take advantage of every person on the street because I need to survive. I need to eat. I need to feed my family. So fuck you and your family. If that's the kind of society you want to live in, then by all means, keep voting Democrat and Republicans. Keep voting for them and keep ignoring the systemic abuse and evil that's carried out in our name every day. And guess what? You'll have the exact society that you want and that you deserve, by the way. Boy, this stuff gets me so heated. And I'm really sick today, but you know what? This needs to be said. And it actually helps me. And it gets my heart pumping, my blood going. And it gets me, feeling good because at least I oppose this evil that's carried out in our name. All right. It's not about winning. I don't fight because I know I'm going to win. I fight because I don't want to accept evil. I don't want to be that guy. So let me read a little bit more. When people lose everything, they start to lose it. When you can't find a job, even though you're looking repeatedly, it leads to things like random shootings and suicides. Go figure. Suicides are at record highs. Mass shootings at record highs. All right. Mass casualty events, record highs. Okay. We see more vile, disgusting displays of inhumanity every day than ever before, and we're supposed to be moving forward. All right. So when you can't find a job, he says, even though you're looking repeatedly, it leads to things like random shootings and suicides. All right. When we're teaching our kids to put profit over people in society, they grow up to not value human life. All right. They start bringing guns to school. All right. When their parents are never home to raise them right because they're working 2 and 3 minimum wage jobs. All right. They're going to get involved with gangs, with drugs. They're going to lose hope. They're going to become radicalized. They're going to start killing and bringing guns to school. This isn't a stretch of the imagination. This is common sense. You treat people like enemy combatants. You can't be surprised when they respond like insurgents. All right. And so we do this. We do teach our kids to put profit over people in society. You may not think of the ways we do, but there's numerous ways. Real quick, every time a kid sees homeless people suffering and dying of exposure, and around the corner, there's an empty foreclosed house. That's what kids are being taught to put profit over people in society. We got enough empty houses in this nation to house every homeless person 3 times over. That's putting profit over people in society. So if you're okay with that and you accept that, then guess what? Think how silly it would sound then to act like some mass shooting is so horrible. Oh, 30 people were killed today in a mass shooting. How horrible. That's nothing. That's nothing compared to the millions that are suffering and dying every day with our blessing. Because we accept this evil and this systemic abuse that's carried out in our name. We accept the for-profit imperialism that destabilizes the world and causes mass migrations and humanitarian crisis. We accept it, and then we want to terrorize the refugees at our border again, like somehow we are the victims. We accept police terror as we criminalize nature and peaceful behavior. We legally allow our cops to rape, to rob, to kill for flowers and peaceful behavior. And we act like Sharia law would be so horrible. Oh my God, we got to have a travel ban to protect us from all these Muslims. They want to impose Sharia law on us. Well, guess what? Whether you were a daughter killed in an honor killing or you were a girl that was killed in a drug war in America, you're still just as dead over ridiculous things. All right. So it doesn't matter. We already live under Sharia law. All right. You could be literally raped by police looking for a flower in your ass or your vagina. Okay. You could have your house stolen. All right. Legally by police using civil asset forfeiture law. And they don't even have to charge you with a crime. All right. This disenfranchises people. When you can't, Chris Hedges talks about a condition of anime. And it's rulelessness. It's when the social bonds are broken, the social bonds that everybody takes for granted, everybody knows. Sayings like, if you work hard, you get a good education, you play by the rules, there's always going to be a place for you in our society. When these things no longer hold true, these social bonds are destroyed, then you get this situation of anime and people become disenfranchised and that's not good. They're going to go into the black market. They're going to become radicalized. They're going to engage in acts of self-destruction with addiction, with deviant sexual behavior, gambling, racism, things of this nature. This is what causes it. Nothing happens in a vacuum. All right. Nothing happens in a vacuum. Say it again. Nothing happens in a vacuum. All right. People don't just snap one day for no reason. All right. These things build up over time and time and time. You just think about it. Put yourself in a minimum wage worker's shoes. You go, you finish high school, you get a minimum wage job trying to, aspire to the American dream. You go to college part-time, to get your degree, and you have to take out loans to pay it off and all this. And you get your degree and you find out there's still not enough living wage work out there. That degree is worthless. You still have to take that minimum wage job at Burger King. You can't make ends meet. That's not how you get a civil society. People are going to turn to crime. People are going to lose their humanity. And then they look over and they see people on Wall Street that don't add anything to our society. Instead, they take from our society. And these people make $20 million a year. And it's seen as a good thing. They see Trump stiffing work contractors, local contractors who do his painting and construction. He stiffs them for the bill, and he knows that, they don't have the money to take him to court and pay all these exuberant legal fees. So they end up having to settle for pennies on the dollar of the original contract. All right. And this guy and he's rewarded. Trump is rewarded for this predatory behavior. All right. And not just Trump, everybody in our society. The more greedy you are, the more cutthroat you are, the more people you step on, the higher up in our society you're placed. All right. Now, We'll never have a utopia. All right. We'll never have a utopia. I don't think we will. But that doesn't mean you don't strive for it. And it certainly doesn't mean you reward greed and you reward sadistic behavior. That's asking for trouble. That's a recipe for disaster. No, we'll never have a utopia, but we don't have to create so many radicalized people like we do. There will always be crazy people, but when your government actively inflicts economic and police terror, and it actively elevates the greedy and the narcissistic and the sadistic, this is what you get. Anger and a sense of betrayal. I'm going to start reading again. Oh, wait, let me see. We will see acts of domestic terrorism. The state will erode more of our civil liberties to control mass protests. Exactly. We see it right now. First we had the Patriot Act, the war against terrorism. Even though we create the terrorists, we fund the terrorists, we give the terrorists logistical support. We brought the Taliban to the White House, called them freedom fighters. Okay. And yet this is a war against terrorism. And really, like John Kiriakou, the CIA analyst, a CIA whistleblower who I interviewed, he said, this isn't a war against terrorism. It's a war against us and our civil liberties. That's what the Patriot Act is about. It's about making people so scared that they willingly give up the liberties that for so long the right hasn't been able to take. The right wing has been literally trying to take our rights away for so long. They've never been able to do it. So now with the Patriot Act, we willingly gave those rights up. Oh, well, if you don't got nothing to hide, what do you care if the government's looking in on you and spying on you? That's to keep us all safe, blah, 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 blah. Well, I don't got nothing to hide when I'm taking a shit, but I don't want you to watch me wiping my ass. Understand? If you give up safety for security, you're going to end up with neither. All right. In a democracy, you have to have balance. You can never be completely safe. I mean, literally, if we took everybody's rights away and we gave police all the right to do whatever they want, go in anybody's home, arrest anybody without any evidence, anything needed, we can literally almost pretty much eliminate crime. I mean, not completely, but really come close. But who would want to live in that kind of police state? That's like North Korea. They have very low crime, but that's because the crime is legalized. That's the same thing we're doing here. We want to talk about North Korea's leader starving its people so that he could have a military. Well, he has a reason. He needs that military to protect against American for-profit imperialism, which, topples democratic nations across, worldwide, because they simply don't align with our economic goals and our economic interests. So we will topple democratic nations. We get Libya, give up their nuclear weapons, and then we topple them and let this man be raped on national TV. And Hillary Clinton laughs about it. All right. That's why people are losing their humanity. Our leaders laugh about people being raped in the public square, and they wonder, oh, no, it's just Trump and his rhetoric. No, this is across the board. This is a bipartisan effort. Both parties serve the same corporate masters. The state will erode more of our civil liberties to control mass protests. Right now, they're saying if you block a road in civil disobedience, that's a felony. And they try to tell us you need a permit to even protest. That kind of defeats the whole purpose of a protest, don't you think? And people go along with this stuff. They think that their right not to be inconvenienced trumps our right to live and to pursue happiness. This is why. No. This is why the state will erode more of our civil liberties to control mass protests. We are seeing, this is my mother, another one of the people who just doesn't care about systemic abuse. That's the only reason they can hear me. You be quiet. Mom, I'm on the computer. Stop now.
All I'm saying is lower your voice.
Stop now.
You stop.
So, anger and a sense of betrayal. This is what we get And then when people hear you talking, they don't want to think about these horrible realities. People like my mother want to be comfortably numb in a blissful stupor, ignoring systemic abuse and evil carried out in our name. And so when anybody makes her look at reality, she gets mad. She gets sick to her stomach. She gets violent. And this is what we got to deal with. But don't be discouraged, because these are the people that need to hear the message the most. These are the people that must hear it. And they need to be made to feel horrible. They need to be ridiculed, ostracized, until they deal with the brutality of our reality. So this is the facts. And then they get ugly and nasty. They don't care about nobody. And then when something happens to them, they want the whole world to stop. Everybody care because I'm in pain today. Nobody cares about things like the drug war. Nobody cares about police raping people looking for weed until it's your daughter or until it's you or your mother. Then you care. All right. That's what I'm talking about. This is the hypocrisy we see time and time again. It doesn't stop in our own families. I love my mother to death. She's a great person. But, this stuff has to be said. People have to be made to feel uncomfortable. You have to force people to take notice and to deal with our reality, or else nothing will ever change. You can't let people live in their little bubble in a delusion so that they can sleep easy and ignore systemic abuse and evil committed in our name. We can't let that happen. We can't let people be indifferent to pointless suffering and death, even if it's our mother. I don't care who it is. When it comes to police, it was my uncle. He was a cop. So for a long time, I didn't want to admit the truth that all cops are domestic terrorists. But that's still a fact. And it doesn't mean I don't love my uncle. I love him. He was a hero. He wouldn't do his job. He was a better family man than a cop, because I would commit felonies every day. And this man he would never throw me away in a broken system, because he knew that system was broken. But at the same time, he threw countless other children away over flowers and things like that. So you can't work for a fascist government. You can't be the oppressive arm of a fascist government and be good. By definition, all cops are bad. All cops pledge to carry out the law. And because many of those laws are evil and unjust, all cops are bad. Now, that's not a statement about who they are in their personal life. My Uncle Bobby was a great family man, a great man. But when he put on the uniform, he was a domestic terrorist, just like every single cop. And it's not shame on me for saying it. It's shame on you for ignoring it. These are our public servants. The only way we have a free democracy is by criticizing our public servants, criticizing tyrannical government, criticizing terrorism. Not ignoring it. Go talk to Nazi Germany. We are seeing some of the student protests, but we will see these on a wider scale. All right, we're starting to see some student protests, but we will see these on a wider scale. I hope the protests will be constructive. I hope people will not resort to extreme measures, but people will do what they have to do to survive. This may mean things like food riots. The political establishment better work very fast to take the pressure off. That's exactly right. When that number of people, when that magic number of people is reached, of people that are, disenfranchised and have no hope for a better tomorrow, we're going to have bloody revolution in the streets. And innocent people will lose their lives. Innocent people will die. And I don't want that, guys. I really don't. I have a young son. I have two young sons. The state stole my first one, so I only know my second son, Rosario. But I don't want that for Rosario or little Rocco or any other child. All right? That's why I fight. That's why I don't accept this evil. That's why I take the criticism from so many. I don't care if they ostracize me, because I have to be able to sleep at night with myself. I have to be able to know that I'm a good person, at least trying to fight for what's right. And you should too, people. Please get up, speak out, join me. Only by all of us standing up and unifying in solidarity can we change the world. Can we stop this systemic abuse and evil that's carried out in our name? It's the only way it's going to happen. I hope the protest will be constructive, like he says. I hope people won't resort to extreme measures, but people will do what they have to do to survive. That's not saying I agree with it. I'm not saying to go out and shoot up a field of Republican lawmakers, but I'm saying don't be surprised when these lawmakers enact laws that make millions of people suffer and die needlessly over money. Don't be surprised when people lose it and go and try to kill them. And don't be sad if they succeed and these lawmakers are killed, because that'll save lives in actuality. I wish it didn't have to come to that. I wish these lawmakers would, use some morals and common sense of their own so that they don't invite the wrath of the public upon themselves. But, if you're going to kill millions of people over money, then guess what? I'm not going to cry for you when you get shot in the head, or when your family gets shot up, or when, something happens terrible to you. All right. Because that's like saying, oh, well, we can't use violence against Hitler. Well, guess what? Sometimes violence is necessary. All right. It's never the first option. It should always be the last option. And I don't encourage anybody to use violence, but it's a fact of life. When people can't eat, they're going to do what they got to do. When you treat people like enemy combatants, they're going to start responding like insurgents. If you don't want that, then you need to oppose the status quo that creates so many radicalized people to kill in the first place. All right, taking away more rights is not going to do it. All right, taking away guns is not going to do it. Taking away our gun rights is not going to do it. More job skills is not going to do it. More education is not going to do it. The only way to stop systemic abuse is to make systemic fixes in the law. All right, and that starts with a federally guaranteed living wage job program. All right, that's the starting point for everything. You want to see addiction go down, violence go down, crime go down. You want to see mass shootings go down. This is how you do it, with a federally guaranteed living wage job, to restore systemic hope, to give people a ladder out of poverty, to give people pride in their community, to have solidarity in your community. This is how you do it. It's synonymous with direct democracy too. You want to talk about gerrymandering in the electoral college? The federal job guarantee destroys it. It gives average citizens all the collective bargaining power. It gives us our power back by giving us extreme mobility. Because if a local government doesn't work for their citizens, they don't work for the public purpose, then people can simply get up and go to a community that really does work for their people. All right. And what that does at a substandard city, well, first of all, they can move to that city. They can go anywhere they want and know they have a federally guaranteed living wage job waiting for them. So what that would do to the substandard city is they lose their tax base and their ability to operate, because local and state governments, they are dependent on an income. They do need revenue. They can't make their own dollars like the federal government. So in essence, the federal job guarantee forces cities and local governments to work for their citizenry, to keep their citizens happy. If they don't, they lose their tax base and their ability to operate. It's that simple. So it restores democracy, kills gerrymandering, stops local corruption. It kills for-profit imperialism. What else does the federal job do? Oh, I don't know. How about make the minimum wage the federal guaranteed living wage without even a mandate to the private sector? We don't even need a minimum wage law. All right. So the right wing should be ecstatic. Hey, they hate minimum wage laws. They hate regulations. We don't need it. And all the government needs to do is institute a federally guaranteed living wage job program. And now all unemployed people will have a living wage job. And then when business wants to, when they need more people, when they need more workers, they're going to have to beat the federal living wage and the federal living wage working conditions to attract the labor workforce away from the job guarantee program. If they don't beat that living wage, then they can't get a labor workforce. They're forced to vacate the economy. Beat it. Okay, so, again, this would empower labor against the predatory nature of capitalism. That's what it would do. It would force capital to truly value labor, or else it wouldn't be able to attract the labor workforce away from the federal job guarantee to begin with. That's why this is the progressive revolutionary keystone program from which all other programs will flow, right? Because it's a democratic means of production. It's capable of increasing any production we need just about. You need top-notch public education, top-notch public health care. You need green, sustainable energy. You need infrastructure. Guess what? You have a federal job guarantee with a pool of labor that you can use. So, and it's also an economic stabilizer, meaning prices will be stabilized. Okay, because when people lose their jobs, they don't have income. They lose their income, so they can't buy production, and so less production gets bought. So the businesses they have to slow down production even more. They have to lay off even more people, and those people lose their incomes. Less production gets bought. It's a downward spiral because the business cycle naturally ebbs and flows. It goes up and down. All right. So when it's on this downward spiral like that, the only thing that can stop it and save it is government intervention as the currency issuer. And it does this with automatic stabilizers. But these are half measures, things like food stamps, unemployment insurance, welfare. These are economic stabilizers designed to give these people that are losing their jobs and income a basic level of income so that they can continue to spend and buy production, which will hamper the recessionary pressures and shorten the recessionary pressures. And, but again, these are half measures. These are because the federal job guarantee is an economic stabilizer that's superior to all. Forget unemployment insurance, forget food stamps. When people lose their jobs, they'll be able to go into the federal job guarantee and have a living wage. And so they'll be able to continue with the exact same consumption, and that will recover our economy much quicker. When people have money at the bottom, guess what? The top love it because they get to produce more and sell more, So, this is the only way you balance a consumer-driven economy. You got to keep money in the hands of the consumers. So you don't target the top, or like the Democrats, you don't target the middle. That's still trickle down voodoo economics. And trickle down economics leaves the bottom income distribution the first to be fired in an economic downturn and the last to be hired in an economic uptick. So the biggest segment of society is in a permanent recession depression. The biggest segment of society is in pain, living under artificial scarcity, needlessly and pointlessly suffering and dying because of a lack of money, and that's what our status quo is. That's what we all collectively accept. And when people like me say, wait a minute, this is unsustainable. Of course, you could give all the money in the world to the top. They're not going to invest in a shitty economy with no disposable income. And that is evidenced by our record amount of private debt. All right. You don't have records amounts of private debt with a balanced economy. Back under the New Deal, you didn't need credit cards for milk and eggs and health care and education and transportation. You didn't need it all for that. You didn't need credit just to survive because our economy was balanced, because our government was instituted these full employment policies of the New Deal. That's why it created the middle class that the whole world was envious of. This created the American dream. So that's really all I got, guys. Thanks a lot. I'm going to check and see how this video came out. Hopefully it didn't freeze or anything. Look for us to start to do these types of videos in the future. Me and Paul Burtwell are going to be doing a lot of these book reviews. So thanks a lot. Take it easy.